Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of UK Edu Stories with myself, Bookie Youssef. I'm your host today. And we've got 3 guests who'll be exploring how we can actually engage the school community. Now, for those of you that have joined us before, you'll notice that my co host Mark isn't with us today. And he, unfortunately, is not well. Thankfully, not COVID-19, but he's going to be taking a break just for this week so he gets better. Hope you get well soon, Mark. So it's going to be myself. We've got 3 guests, Christalla, Flora, and Mandy, who'll be sharing their own experiences and insights and wisdom about how they've actually engaged their school communities in the different ways they've actually undertaken it. Now, I can't believe it's already the beginning of October. Where did September go? But I have to say, it went equally quickly as well as slowly. So, those of you that have actually subscribed to our channel, thank you so much. If you are new to the channel and would like to keep in touch with our regular updates, please make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification button so that you receive every video as it appears live every Thursday. Now, on that note, what I'm going to do is, rather than just hearing myself this evening, I'm going to introduce our very first guest, Christalla. So let me just enter you into... Oh, sorry, my mistake. Flora, sorry. Flora, I'm going to welcome you in.
Hello.
Hi, Flora. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. How are you keeping?
Yeah, doing really, really well. I know what
Great.
you were saying about I can't believe it's already October.
So how have things been with regards to the start of the academic year? I know it's slightly different to what we've experienced over the years.
Yeah, it's definitely been different. But actually, I think everyone has pulled together so amazingly well. The school community, the staff, the children are fantastic. And I keep saying how resilient children are with change and everything that they're faced with. We have a lot of lessons to learn from them, I think.
Yes, definitely.
But
Most
it's been great. It's been a fantastic start.
Good. I'm glad to hear that it's actually gone really well.
Yeah.
Okay, so Flora, for those of our audience who don't actually know who you are, would you mind actually introducing yourself, please? What you do and the context in which you work with?
Yes, so I'm a head teacher of a small medium-sized primary school of about 210 pupils, Cromarsh Gifford Primary School in South Oxfordshire, beautiful, lovely South Oxfordshire, but a really lovely school, 1 form entry. So yes.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So let me ask the first question in that case. How would you define your school community?
I think one of the things that I've always said is that for us, school has to be at the heart of the community. We're a small village, and we're a Church of England school. So working with the church, we are the heart, and we should be sort of the heartbeat of the community. And for us, school community involves everybody, the children, obviously, the staff, the parents, and the people who live near us. And it's about trying to engage as many community members in what we're doing, and being a part of what we do, as much as possible, really.
Okay, thank you so much. So can you share some of the ways in which you've actually engaged your school community? Because you've mentioned quite a number of different members within that, and what's actually helped to make this possible, please?
First, I think I have to say that it can be really difficult engaging as many, all the stakeholders and the community, especially parents. And I think that's the one thing we don't have it perfect. And I'm always looking for new ways to engage parents and to engage more people within our community. But for us, one of our values at school is service. And we use that a great deal with the kids about providing service to those around us. And they hear me say, oh, you can brighten someone's day with just a smile. But we do lots of things in the community where parents and children bring in things like at Christmas and Easter. We'll bring in chocolate Easter eggs. We'll bring in Christmas biscuits and chocolates and wrap them up. So at Christmas, the children then go and take all these wrapped biscuits and chocolates to the senior citizens in the village that we have we have a list of people that we know live in our community, just so they know that we're thinking of them at Christmas time, we're thinking of them at Easter time, and everybody, is a part of this. And I think that for us is one of the really special things that we do for the people who don't come to our school and may have not any links with our school. And again, it's reinforcing that whole value of service.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things.
Okay. Can I just ask a question in that case? I love the fact that you actually have, the chocolates that are given out at Easter in December. How was it different this Easter? Because obviously we had lockdown. What changes had to be made?
So obviously we actually didn't do it at Easter this year, which was a real shame, and we thought about that a lot, because we were just inundated with so many other things, and that was the difficulty during lockdown as a school, was engaging not just our parents and our children, but engaging the wider community.
Yeah.
Was unfortunately it didn't become. I think it became less of a focus because we were so involved in trying to keep our parents and our children engaged in what we were doing.
Okay.
Um, so unfortunately, during lockdown, that didn't happen.
Okay. And
Mm.
I can understand that completely. So if, for example, we're in lockdown again, who knows what may happen at Christmas? Do you think that you'll be in a better position to actually engage the wider community this time around?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've actually been thinking about that and thinking, especially during Christmas, and if we were to go into another lockdown, the importance of making sure that people like the senior citizens in our village who, actually might be alone during Christmas
Yes.
or might not be able to have their families visit them if they live out of the country or whatever the circumstances might be. So I think now more than ever, it's going to be even more important that we reach out to the community so they know we're still there and we're still thinking about them. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to just touch upon a point that you made earlier, Flora, about the fact that you said that the members of your community that you found, I suppose, historically difficult to engage with the parents. Has that been the case?
I don't know if it's a difficulty. I think so when we do parent surveys, it's the one thing that always comes up is about communication, and I think that's an easy thing to give improvements or give pointers for parents. I think communication always comes back as a thing that maybe isn't right for some parents.
Hmm.
And I think it's about making sure that we are communicating in many different ways, making sure we're engaging the parents who possibly, didn't enjoy school when they were younger, and so they find it difficult coming into the school gates. And it's actually just thinking out of the box and being creative in the ways that we try and engage everybody. So we're not just always having the same parents coming to events, but we're engaging as many people as we can.
Okay, thank you so much for that. What advice would you give to say like school leaders who are actually looking to engage more members of their school community based upon your experiences?
Key is getting people's opinions, getting people's voice, hearing what works for everyone. Obviously, you're not going to please everybody. That's
Yes.
number one that you need to realize. But it is about trying to gain as many different perspectives as you can and find out what works in the majority of cases. And that's really important. Don't just do what you think is right, but go out
Mhm.
there and garner, different opinions and different perspectives so that you have a better idea of what is going to work when you go out to engage.
Okay, thank you so much. And if you've got school leaders or like members of a school who are actually trying to find out different ways in which they could actually engage their community, have you got any advice of where they could actually go as a starting point?
Twitter. You put in any question in Twitter and you will get 100 responses immediately. Twitter is an amazing place. I think it's just about collaboration, isn't it? It's working with local schools, working with schools that perhaps aren't local but are similar contexts to yours. But it is very much about collaboration, and I keep talking about this about schools absolutely need to reach out to other schools, and we need to be breaking down these whatever walls that exist of competition between schools and working with each other, because that is what it's all about. It's about improving outcomes for every child everywhere. So, reaching out to other schools.
Absolutely. And talking about Twitter and reaching out, that's actually how I got to know you a number of
Absolutely.
years ago, Flora, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
you actually put a tweet out asking for members of the Twitter community to come and visit your school. What prompted that? What instigated you doing something that many people might just think is quite unusual?
So I think that is I completely didn't even think about adding that to my list of things of engaging community, because that
Mhm.
is, that was about engaging the Twitter community in our school. And I think the biggest thing is I love to have visitors in school because I love the children to have an experience of hearing other people's stories and hearing what other people have to say. Everybody has a story, and I think, there's nothing better than having a lived experience, someone coming in and telling their story to the school. And you came in and taught us about failure and resilience through your driving test, and the children loved it. They still remember it to this day.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
it was great. It was such a memorable experience. And I remember even your chickens. You've got school chickens, haven't you? Is that correct?
We did.
That were
We don't have.
wandering around.
Yeah.
So it was really good. And I think it was a lovely way to be engaged, an unusual way as well, but a lovely way to be engaged with a school setting that I would normally not have actually been involved with, because particularly it's outside of London. So thank you very much for that.
It's great to have you in as well.
Okay, brilliant. So, Flora, thank you so much for sharing some of your insights. You'll have an opportunity to share and contribute some more. But what I'm going to do now is take the opportunity to invite our second guest, Christalla.
Hey.
Hello, Christalla. Hello, how are you
Hi.
keeping?
Yeah, well, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. As I say, particularly as now the autumn term is actually progressing. So would you like to introduce yourself to our audience, please? Explain who you are, what you do, and the context in which you work in.
Yeah, so I'm an executive head teacher of two primary schools in Tottenham. I've actually only been in post since April, so probably I'll touch on experiences in my previous setting where I was kind of established for 7 years, and in my new settings where it's a little bit surreal. So joining during lockdown on the 20th of April, I had to think outside the box, and I think I really understood the term one size does not fit all. So it was about evaluating need and trying my best. Oh, there's an extra guest there. Trying my best through the mediums that we had available to find out what was in place and what parents wanted. So very different from my previous setting.
Okay, so I'll ask the same question that I asked Flora earlier on in terms of, as an executive head teacher, how would you define your school community now?
I think judgments are made because of my postcode, because I'm in North London and it's Tottenham. Not always the best judgments, but all I can say is I serve the most delightful communities. We're two Church of England schools, so we belong to a LAT within the London diocese. Okay. So there's a local academy trust, and we're LAT 1, and then there's LAT 2. We are very closely connected with both our churches, St Paul's and All Hallows, and you feel it. You feel the spirituality, you feel the connection as soon as you walk in. I've got to say they're the most well-behaved, respectful children I've ever come across, regardless of, actually we're right in the back garden of Tottenham Hotspur.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to pause there. I support Arsenal, the Gunners. So I have to right, okay.
However, part of my role has been re-establishing links with the Tottenham Foundation, their educational bit. So there haven't really been strong links with the schools. So I was quite shocked because where my previous school was in Enfield, I had a brilliant relationship with the foundation. So we've just rekindled that. We had street dance going on today, and it's a good time to be in Tottenham. It's the best time, I'd say, because not only the council, not only the local schools, not only the churches that we affiliate to, but the entire community is actually coming together as one. And I think I've seen family and teamwork at its best. I think it doesn't always take a pandemic, but sometimes it takes a crisis, because I think our two schools were at the heart of the 2012 riots, if you remember, in Tottenham a while back.
Yes, I do.
And that's where our first set of values, you know me well, Bookie, I'm an ethical, optimistic leader, values-led through and through, no longer afraid to be authentic. I'm going to put a plug there for Women Ed. And we've grown together. I mean, I think you and I met at the same event where I met Mark, and that was at the New Wave Federation.
Right.
It was a tech. We were a one-to-one iPad school. You know, very different setting now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think looking at what the riots impacted on the communities I serve now, they created their first values. So our kind of mission statement, what we lead by is, you know, learning to love, loving to learn. We do everything in love at our schools. And you see that, you feel that, you hear that, you smell that. But their first three values were friendship, wisdom, and forgiveness, because it was a hurting community during the riots, and they needed that wisdom in order to strengthen the friendships and to bring about forgiveness. So having started in April and talking to, at the time, it was just key worker children. I mean, it was a constant. We didn't have holidays. We worked throughout all the holidays, and it was key worker children. Yeah. And the stories they brought has given a rebirth now to three further values, which is community, compassion, and perseverance. And that leads everything. So working really closely with the clergy from our church, working really closely with the charities in Tottenham. So looking at things like the Felix Project, Acts 5, a lot of support is coming into our schools. So we do food. We did, during lockdown, the food deliveries, and had people literally come into school. We delivered some things. There was a variety of need. I couldn't say one blanket strategy catered for all the needs, and I was dipping in. Like Flora, I mean, Twitter has been pivotal to my growth, to my development, to my community's development, and a huge amount of support. I've put a crowdfunding page up and little appeals for things. It's coming our way. But in addition to that, I've got to say, the Education Endowment Foundation's literature is useful, really useful. And connecting with other schools that aren't necessarily similar in context or location has helped us to grow and has helped the community to gel with others. So I think understanding, first of all, what the need is, really evaluating what's in place. Again, sorry, Flora, I'm kind of repeating what you said. I think we're singing from the same hymn sheet. Absolutely. Really finding out what your community wants, and that's beyond just your parents. It's the community, isn't it? It's the whole area you serve, so that you're that hub, you're the gelling agent for your immediate neighbours, but we branch out. So the first thing I wanted to do was look at mindfulness and well-being ready for September. Mm-hmm. So we enlisted a fellow Women Ed member. So Sarah Pengelly is involved in the Big Think, and I've used her successfully in previous settings. And she came in and we ran workshops and introductions through Zoom that involved parents, children, governors, staff. Already from day one, they knew that, my way is to involve everybody. Good. And we got their thoughts and openness, clarity, but harsh honesty. So I think that kind of set the bar for me. Moving on from there, I can say that the technology line that I was very comfortable with in a stop hiding, Bookie, I can see you.
I'm so sorry. No, my okay, I'm not going to show it, but unfortunately my ring light has just moved, so I'm just gonna, no, that's still not, this is so not good. I am so sorry.
No, it's fine. It's a friendly distraction. But where like you, I couldn't access the right technology. The schools don't have the right infrastructure. I had to go to a plan B. So it's not a nightmare. I can still see you.
I still can't get it. It normally works fine. I'm not even sure. Okay, so Christalla, forgive me. This is so terrible. And
this is live
as well. Exactly. So I don't even know what's happening. Okay, this will have to do. Oh gosh.
That's fine.
Carry on. Carry on.
So then, we were literally just picking up the phone, sending texts. This was like a daily thing. And then once I'd set up Google Classroom and trained staff, we're using Google Classroom. We then introduced Purple Mash for the kids. But it's been a process, and it hasn't been ad hoc, and it hasn't been impromptu. every step has been planned, every step has had a needs analysis, every step has had a review, and we continue to do that till we get it right. I don't know if we'll ever get it right because we have very transient communities and we mobility is rife. So we constantly reflect. I always say we're schools that never sleep. We're constantly there to meet the needs, the ever-changing demands, the variety of, circumstances impacting on our communities. But I think another additional area to air is the partnerships we're forming with external professionals. And that's not just social services. There's a variety of needs therapists that we've had to keep on tap, counsellors, and, how are children accessing that? How are our families accessing that? And I didn't want that to stop. So, we've used Teams, we've used Zoom, we've used, it's not called Hangouts now, it's called Meets.
Meet, yes.
And anything that my parents could access, because that's another area we need to address, is training our parents, because there are not only language skill barriers, there are a lot of the children have more skills than the parents.
Of course.
And it's not even the skills of the parents. A lot of our parents have mobile phones but don't have access to the internet at home. So, you've got to think on a variety of levels so that nobody's left out.
Yes.
So it's a hard one to answer in one sentence.
Well, no, and thank you. I think you've answered it admirably, and I think also as well, I know you touched upon some of the aspects that Flora actually mentioned. I think that there are elements of obviously very strong good practice and community, and reinforcing what you said about being strategic, finding out from the community about what the needs are, and actually making sure that as best you can, you help to address that while engaging the community as well. And it's really interesting that 8 years on, obviously, you're helping the school community move from where they were in terms of what they experienced and the trauma there to a community. I love what you said about the community, compassion and perseverance as well as the forgiveness aspects as well. So it's a very strong aspect to build around the love that you mentioned as well. So thank you so much for that, Christalla.
You're welcome.
Okay, so you said that you have been there since April, but would you mind sharing from your previous school setting, maybe some of the most memorable school events that you've actually, events have actually taken place where you've actually engaged the school community?
Well, quite a funny one and an overpopulated one was I joined again in April. Actually, it must be the time that I decided to leave schools. So I joined in April 2013, and then I think it was the 27th at the time. It was right at the end of April, and second week in May, Ofsted came and awarded the school with a grade that they weren't expecting, and they were very disappointed with. But as a community, it kind of was, everything was my fault. I'd been there for 3 weeks and look at my impact, so immediate impact. So I needed to gel a broken community. It was really a shock. They were outstanding about 11 years before, 7 years before. So it was a big drop. So I held head teacher forums that were, well attended, vocal parents, vocal members of the community.
Right.
It was, interesting, colourful. By the beginning, mid 2014, 3 people were attending. These were either half-termly or termly, depending on, turnout. They were available half-termly. Then by the end of 2014, it was just one governor that came. Now, I didn't know if I should think that, they didn't want to come anymore. And then one of the governors said, I think you've earned their respect and their trust. They now know where you're going.
Oh, fantastic.
So I just thought, it just took the words of one person to sort of reassure me that, I don't know, as educators, when we're observed in lessons in the old-fashioned way, or when we get a monitoring visit from, our O friends, and we always think the worst, don't we? And I think I still fell into that trap of, oh God, they don't want to come, they don't want to, but actually it was, they've got faith in you, and things are okay now. You've earned their respect. They trust you. So I think we did a variety of things, but I think there were some concerns with the use of that children were using the internet for, WhatsApp, a variety of things, and apps that were just coming up. So quite early, after getting the good grade, and we had a couple of outstanding areas, I became obsessed with Twitter. So much so that it was a daily visit into the classroom so parents could see the great learning going on. And it managed also the safeguarding issues that had arisen with technology, because staff modelled, it's a brilliant staff. And we had, evening conversations that were professional, but modelled for the children. So it's like a normal lesson where you model and then you let the children have a go.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. Learning cafes, not workshops where you talk at parents. They weren't great for us. But learning cafes where children and parents learnt together, half-hour sessions, across all areas of the curriculum, including well-being, were hugely populated, again, because the parents felt a part of that. They were part of a lesson and got to learn the children's styles of learning and what the school had to offer. Because I think some were a little apprehensive when we were saying, we're a 1-to-1 iPad. We're actually a 3-to-1 iPad school. Don't want the children using iPads all the time. And when they saw what we were doing, they had a different love for technology and a different respect for the possibilities. So it's kind of keeping your ear to the ground and listening to your frontline workers, people who were out in the playground, who were, many of my support staff live locally. So people that knew the community. I think listening is probably the best skill.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's one bit of advice I'd give other leaders is, be an effective listener, really hear what they're saying. And some of the things they're saying you don't want to hear, but listen to it and make it better, work on it together, because even the things you don't want to hear make you a better leader.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you again. Great examples there. And I think 2 points I want to pick up on. The learning cafes that you mentioned, where the children were learning alongside their parents, carers and guardians. I think that's a fantastic and strong model, particularly for taking learning at home during the lockdown. So I think that's a really novel and innovative approach to actually have. My other point is a question to you. So you mentioned about the fact that it's really important to listen to members of your school community. And initially, when you said that you had these half-termally opportunities for members of the community to come and share their opinions, how did you manage when they weren't sharing things? Obviously, it transitioned from a setting in which a lot of people turned out because they weren't necessarily on board. You mentioned it as a broken community, to people actually trusting and respecting you. In the early days, when you had to hear some of those hard messages, how did you deal with it so that you didn't take it on board as a school leader, but you knew that it basically provided an avenue for which things could actually be worked upon for the betterment of the school?
I think that it's a multi-pronged question, actually, because it wasn't just the community as well. It's staff, it was everyone. Because when you get a grade that people don't expect and you're a new leader, it's a tough message. So I think, I never cried in public. I cried on the way home or at home, because you don't become a head to do those things, do you? You don't sort of. But I think working with staff, again, I've got to say, nothing's done independently, and I can't take the credit for doing anything alone. So some things were top down, and, we had a list of non-negotiables, and that's for staff and for community, because we had a few incidents and yeah, I did have to call the police, and there, it was tough where we were. It was hard. It was challenging, but befriending them was showing that actually it was about the children's betterment. Now, a lady called Jan Ashby used to do all the safeguarding training in Enfield, and she used to say, you always put the children first. And I used to say, but you put them middle and last as well. So it's not just about putting them first.
Mm-hmm.
It's, it's working with parents to actually understand everything I do, everything we say is actually for the betterment of our children, for the better. So it doesn't happen overnight. I think, again, sorry, Flora, I think you spoke about multiple perspectives. Yeah. You kind of have to look through the lens of your children, of your society. What has made your society the way they are? They don't become that without having endured experiences. Mm-hmm. So I think negative experiences render people perhaps aggressive or angry or vulnerable themselves. And positive ones give you a different outlook on life. And I think it's how you manage that and the provision. So our provision, where we had, a place to be and counsellors, and wasn't just for the children, it was for the families. And I think once they realised that actually we were there to support we were a community school. We wanted to be that person that even if you had a housing problem or a home office problem or whatever the dilemma was, together we'd find a solution. And if we couldn't, we'd introduce you to a partner that could.
Okay.
So I think it takes time.
Yes.
It doesn't happen overnight. I think there are a few hiccups and mountains you have to climb, and some of those mountains render you in a pit, but you have to find your way out of the pit. But once you do, the pebbles come. They're not the boulders anymore, and you kind of jump over those pebbles. You're not squashed by a boulder. So I think experience, I think my age as well, sometimes gives you a little bit more courage. But I'm not saying, if you're young, you don't have courage. I think personally, I've grown, and you become tougher. You start to understand and see things from yet again another perspective.
Thank you so much, Flora. I can see you nodding in agreement with a lot of what Christalla is sharing. Do you have any additional points that you'd actually like to add to that?
No, it's really great to hear, from a different school. I love the fact, where it's about sharing people's problems. I think, when people are having dilemmas or when there's issues at home, you are the place that can also help. And I think that's fantastic. That's what school is about.
Yeah,
that,
very
we
strong
are part of the
collaborative community as well. So I'm going to just pause. So just to share some of the comments from Periscope, Mark's Periscope channel, as well as YouTube. So sparkling_sugar, thank you so much for joining us and wishing us evening. And another message from sparkling_sugar. Flora is so inspirational. I have followed her after Tom Rogers' interview. Another educator, I have to say. Hi, Tom. Such a strong leader, and can't see the rest of that. Oh, yep, here we go. Strong leader and strong woman. #inspiring, #honest. And I totally agree. Couldn't agree more. And another comment from sparkling_sugar. Own experiences and sharing new experience with parents is so important. We've got Ame. I hope you're pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you for joining us. And she also said about the fact that listening to stakeholders' voice is so important. So that again concurs with what we've actually heard here as well. So sparkling_sugar said, we did something similar and asked staff to join the group to discuss ideas. Oh, okay. So one comment about my headphones. Ms_Manak. Loving the headphones, Bookie. Yes, they're back. So these headphones, I think they need to have their own Twitter channel themselves. They're so popular. Yeah, this is what happens when you have a younger brother who likes gadgets as much as I do. And last comment to share from Ms_Manak. Really like the idea of learning cafes. I think that's such a powerful way of engaging the community. So thank you for sharing that with us. So I am now going to add our third and final guest for this evening, Mandy. Hello. How are you? Oh, okay. How are you? You all right? Oh, we can't hear you.
Any better?
Yes, fantastic. Thank you. Welcome to tonight's episode. Are you keeping well?
I am trying to keep well.
Okay, fantastic.
I'm hoping I can keep on message.
I'm sure you will. So, Mandy, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience, please, by explaining what you do and the context you actually work in, please?
All right, fantastic. Well, I'm Mandy Preville-Findlay. I am an educator. I've been working in this field for the last 20-something years. And yes, I know I don't look it. I have worked across London. I've worked in Southend as we're in all sorts of things within schools: teacher, deputy head, assistant head, and head of school. Head of school for Daubeny and Hackney, as well as School 21, the primary part of it. And I'm currently working as a consultant, working with various schools, looking at diversity and inclusion, looking at school improvement. And I do a lot of coaching with middle leaders, senior leaders, MPQ, SL, MPQH type programs, future leaders. So that's basically what I do.
Okay.
I'm also very interested in sustainable development. So I'm doing a little bit of stuff with that as well.
Okay, thank you. That's a wide brief there. And do you have enough time? Do you have enough time to rest? It sounds like you might be busy working with all those different things that you're actually doing.
I do try to rest, because I've learned the hard way, and that's for another show, the need to rest and put your well-being at the heart of what you do. So yes, I make time to rest.
Great, Miss. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so first question. So could you explain some of the ways in which you've engaged your school community? So I know that you're not presently working in a school, but in the school communities that you've actually worked in as the past, when you've been the school leader, the head of school, how have you actually engaged your school community, and what helped to make this possible?
So when I've worked within schools, what we've always focused on is making entry. And that's become my new best phrase. I'm doing a course with the Big Leadership Adventure. And one of the things we've been talking about is making entry. And even without realizing it, I've always recognized the need to welcome people in. Considering the schools I've worked in and the backgrounds of a lot of our families, there's been a need to sort of acknowledge that they're coming from sometimes very stressful situations, and they're not always feeling welcomed. So I like to bring the party, as I say. I like there to be, that's going to be the hashtag for the night, hashtag. So anything to do with celebrating where you're from, who you are, your language, your background, your achievements, anything like that, food, wine, drinks, making things. I like to be in a place where our families feel celebrated for who they are, for what they do, for what they can contribute, because I truly believe that we all have an innate need to contact, to make connections. And I think schools are first and foremost a place for making connections. Forget the academics, that will come, but the connections we make will last the rest of our lives. And I think we owe it to those children to ensure that we bring connections in any way we can. So I've had some fantastic members of staff, head teachers, executive heads, and teachers, etc., who have given me the leeway to do things a bit differently. And one of the first things I remember when I just finished being qualifying as an NQT, being allowed to decide how I would celebrate the end of our module. I think it might have been a history or geography one, and it was an Olympic year. I won't tell you which one. We decided. I decided with my year one class that we were going to have a carnival celebrating all the countries that were being represented in the Olympics that year. And tagged along with somebody from the local authority. We got a bit of funding. What was supposed to be an evaluation of a geography model turned out to be a whole school party in the playground with flags, music, food, parents, staff, celebrating the fact that we were all in this one little community in Canning Town, but we were from so many different places and we had a lot to talk about and a lot to share and to learn from each other. So that was one of the things that I always remember being, it was just meant to be. It turned into a whole school event, and moving fast forward, to 2016, 2015, thereabout, when I was at school 21, the whole idea of project-based learning took that concept and sort of poured a little steroid on it and made it into this massive whole school approach to celebrating learning in a really interactive way. I don't mean to be funny, ladies, just how
I've never heard of project-based learning with steroid on it, so that's why.
Honestly, it was wonderful to see children learning about practical ways in which they can support the community, learning about things that they can do to solve real life problems, reception children learning to be archaeologists and being able to say the names of all the dinosaurs that I still can't pronounce, to explain all of these concepts and then think about the different parts of the world it came from. And, it was wonderful. So I recognize the strength in using the persons around us and using our community in order to shift the learning and plan the learning. But on a more relaxed and fun side, which child doesn't like coming to school with something of their background, whether it's the food, the clothing, the music, and it takes very little sort of shift into that mode. You can take a normal international fair or summer fair and call it what you like. Give it a theme, foods from around the world, or dances from around the world. And I remember when we started having this conversation, Bucky, and I told you about one of my old head teachers who taught me to Morris dance, and you almost fell out your chair. I'm telling you, in Whitmore, in Hackney, Andy Howe, wherever he is, bless his soul, taught us Morris dancing, and it was a real hit with the kids because we had adults who'd lived here all their lives, not knowing the history of it, not knowing how to do it, what it was about. And really recognizing that it doesn't matter where you are from, you've got something of value to contribute to your community, I think is something we should really be promoting.
Definitely.
So
I love that key message. Absolutely. The fact that, no matter where you're from, you can contribute something. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing such rich and vivid examples of how you've engaged your school communities in the past. I want to go on to, I suppose, a slightly challenging question, which is, what type of challenges could be faced and experienced in trying to engage a school community? And any suggestions of how we could actually work our way around this?
Absolutely. I think one of the major challenges was time, believe it or not, because everybody was trying to get the curriculum taught, meet the grades level or the grade boundary. That posed a problem because there wasn't a shift. There wasn't a quick enough shift in some places where I worked into. You can utilize the two things. It's about, if we're going to be teaching maths and English and history and geography, we compartmentalize everything and shift our energies into that, but not taking into account how we could actually utilize these things and make it a part of the learning.
Okay.
So time is a real, challenge for a lot of schools, but also thinking about who is going to lead, finding a champion. And I've done a little bit of a draft, so I don't forget all my points. Finding somebody who's passionate enough to say, we will make this a priority is another thing to think about. And also making entry with communities who are not fearful, but a little suspicious as to why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay.
And having to find a way to make that work. In one of the schools, we had a parent group, and it was wonderful because they were up for whatever we came with. And by getting them involved, that cut my workload down, exponentially. So it's about finding that person or groups of persons who are going to be happy to support, but also meet the parents and the staff on their level and to be able to take them on that journey. So imagine having to deliver a difficult conversation to somebody, but because you had a plate of, I don't know, bouillon on the playground with them, all of a sudden having that conversation is no longer difficult because you've met on that personal level. So I think, it's almost a catch-22. If you don't make the time, you will always pay the price. So I think it's worth putting some of those time and energies and money and staffing and all of that to one side and really sort of evaluating what's important to you as a school and going for it.
Thank you. I didn't expect you to say time, but I can see what you're saying. And I think what you're, it just basically reinforces the fact that just find those opportunities, really be on the lookout of where you can actually make those connections with various members of the community, but always having in mind about the fact that they can add value to, to the wider school community. Thank you. Now, I know that you've got a presentation. Are you okay for me to actually continue the questions, or would you like to share your presentation with us?
I'm happy for you to carry on with because I'm bringing in all the points anyway. If there's anything I forget,
that's fine. Okay, that's brilliant.
You can have a look.
Okay, so you mentioned about your one of the colleagues that you worked with. I still can't get over Morris dancing. Who knows how to Morris dance? But anyway, sorry. So you mentioned about the Morris dancing. Are there any other examples of memorable ways in which you've engaged your school community?
Yes. So in terms of little activities like bingo nights, and getting children to bring their parents along to events like that, movie nights, and school discos with a twist, where you would have the adults, because normally you drop the kids off and you leave, don't you?
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So this time you stay and you have a conversation with the parents in there, because it's a way of breaking down those barriers, and everybody being a little silly, and all of a sudden it's not such a daunting thing to have a conversation with a parent you've never spoken to before, because we're all doing this thing that we're all maybe a little uncomfortable doing together. Yeah. So that's the thinking behind that. In terms of activities, the other thing that I really like is the curriculum showcases. And again, building on what I said earlier about what happened in my first school, School 21 do some fantastic exhibition evenings where the entire school, both from reception right up to, well, I don't know what form it is now, but it was, I think it was year 8 or 9 when I was there. And everybody puts on show what they did, whether it was something that culminated in making a book, a drama presentation, the choir singing, a display of writing, art, scientific experiments. On one or two occasions, there were restaurants, so children were cooking and parents were tasting. I think that there's a lot of value in that, because you're hitting the academic and you're hitting the social at the same time.
Okay.
And you're celebrating, what's that phrase? Beautiful work. You're showing work that children can be proud of having put together. And parents can be proud of their children being able to articulate the work that they've been done and the process behind it. So I think, yeah, these two things have been quite good highlights for me.
Okay, fantastic. So on a wider context, you said you've worked in a number of schools, and even now with the support you offer as the consultant, what examples of best practice have you come across with regards to highly engaged school communities?
I think some of the best things I've seen is walking into a school and not knowing that the person who was serving me school dinners was a parent who had volunteered their time. So the parent was a chef and had volunteered their time to work with the kitchen staff to teach them more sustainable ways of cooking. This was linked to a school garden. And yeah, that was just amazing to see that parents, and I didn't know the parent was a chef. He did the barbecue at the school summer fair. But it's the conversations that get you to know what is happening there. And that parent helped the school find more sustainable ways and more interesting foods to put on the menu. So I think that's one of the highlights for me. Coffee mornings. I know a lot of people do them. I know it can be hard work, but you cannot underestimate the power of just having a cup of tea and a chat with somebody for 5 minutes after they've dropped off their kids. There have been some really good examples I can think of where schools have intermingled that with a bit of training. So whether you're doing, I don't know, whatever it is. And I think you did mention that, Christalla.
Yeah, Christalla, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely, even if you do it on a rotating basis and a different teacher leads it, I've seen that done to really powerful effect in different schools.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just so absorbed in what you're actually saying. It's really good. Right, okay, we've got some more comments actually that I'd like to share from you. So again, thank you to everyone that's actually joining us this evening. Okay, so we have got Zena. Christalla is utterly amazing. In every conversation and public forum, I have so many takeaways. I could say that to all of our guests this evening, but thank you for joining us this evening, Zena. Oh, this is someone we recognise.
Wrong side of the
Hi,
mic.
Mark. Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for joining us, even though you're still recuperating. Absolutely loving the show this evening. Sorry I've been unable to join you. What's amazing advice. Absolutely concurring. Great. And he also says again about the fact that learning cafes are the way forward. And I really think that will be a powerful model that would help continue, not just building a school community, but help with blended learning. So we can actually move the learning from what takes place on site into the home. Another comment from Mandy, from Zena saying, love this, Mandy. And another one, looking at all of you amazing women fills me with such inspiration. Thank you so much, Zena. That is absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to end with, round up actually, with some questions to all of you. If there's someone who, so I know, Flora, you mentioned this before about the fact that, your go-to is Twitter, if you're looking for inspiration and things like that. So Christalla, if you've got, say like school leaders or members of a school community who are actually looking for ideas or where they can actually find out effective ways of engaging their school community, where would you suggest that they could actually look?
I first and foremost think you've got to look within your own community. So you've got to look at the needs. I think I've now worked in 5-6 different settings. And though there are so many commonalities that we share and strive to achieve really the same goals, regardless of postcode or diversity, I still think you kind of have to do that analysis of what your community needs. And that lends itself to, because you need to start there before you even have all the variety of ideas. You need to see if it matches the need that you want to serve. So ask the right questions, ask any questions, see what is in demand. And then I would say, go to your Twitter, go to your local groups. I don't know if you meet as heads, You know, if you do look at people's websites, look at how they're reacting, look at what people's, you know, aims are, and find a common thread there. I do think networking, because, and I know Mandy touched on this because she's in South London, but I worked with the South London Teaching Alliance a couple of years ago on a course. Yeah, and I just think that, and I've also worked with the East London Teaching Alliance, and I think that my network has grown primarily because of Women Ed, also because of the Chartered College, also because of the 3-4 women here, and Mark, wherever he is. So I think networking is key, because you really do get sound, honest, effective advice. So they're my go-to. So apart from Twitter, I would say networking, but hear what your community needs first.
Okay, and I know you touched upon it, Christalla. Thank you so much for your ideas. But how could start, for example, now, you know, like, for example, you know, with the backdrop we're actually finding ourselves against, you may have parents that may not be quite as comfortable as perhaps coming on site to the school and things like that. How else could we actually ask those questions and making sure we get the answers that we need to hear in order to make the changes that are necessary or serve our school community in the way that we need to? Well,
language is a barrier with some of mine at the moment, and none are actually allowed on site at the moment. So the handful that are just really depending on scenario and the severity of issues that we're trying to cater for, of situations that arise. So parents aren't actually allowed at all. I would say what we're doing through technology, through telephones, through texting, through the children themselves, often as interpreters, I'm also enlisting on translators. So where we're making calls, just to make sure that people, where Mandy was saying, you know, you need to know how to communicate to different people in different ways, and School 21 are brilliant at doing that. And those project-based learning activities for children, it kind of goes out to the adults as well, because you need to meet their needs in a medium that they can understand. So we're working really closely at the moment with a group of children and a local autism society, but I am enlisting translators to communicate with my parents, because the children aren't able to, because they're in the early stage of their career in our school, and letters aren't going to work, neither a text, neither are phone calls from an English speaking member of staff. So I think you kind of have to embrace the diversity and then find something to crack that, so that they completely understand at their level. We've got a couple of families that just came to the UK last week. So language is a massive barrier at the moment for a core group of our new parents.
Okay, thank you so much. Flora, do you have any points? I know I keep coming back to you to say, do you have any additional points? Because I saw you were nodding.
No, I mean, I think, you know, obviously the challenges in all of our schools are so very different. And it's really great to hear what the challenges are, and that we all do have challenges, because sometimes you do think, oh my goodness, you know, what else can I do? So just being able to hear, you know, the things that you're doing in your schools is giving me ideas now. So I think this is the way forward, is just constant collaboration. And as Mark said, I saw a lot of comments down there about talking with other teachers and leaders. You know, it absolutely is a great use of time, and we need to be having these conversations so much more to engage as many people in what we're doing as possible.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you so much. Mandy, what advice could you share on this particular point?
I think the best advice is a bit of what everyone has said. You should start with your community, and I can't emphasize that enough. Your community is diverse. It doesn't matter where you are. Your community is diverse. Even if everyone looks exactly the same, we have not had the same life experiences, and that should not be underestimated. And I think having those conversations will then tell you what else needs to be done. Liaising with other schools, liaising with your local authority, you know, searching the internet and searching Twitter and finding those sorts of places that are engaged in whatever it is that you need engagement in. And if it has something to do with religion, reach out to your religious institutions, so your churches and your mosques and your temples, etc. So it doesn't matter what avenue you have an issue with, there will be an area and someone in your area that can support. It's about putting yourself out there to make the effort to find out. And if there isn't a parent who could lead you to a path that you can use, I would be very surprised. I would really be surprised. So we've got professionals around us. Trust them, trust our own instincts when we think that things need to be done a bit differently, but also engage with the children as well, because more often than not, they also know what it is that they're trying to find out or look for, or what could make them, and children go to different groups, and liaise with and mingle with different children from different areas. So they also can find a way forward in terms of us deciding how to engage the community. Just one sideways example of a child who said that my dad never comes to any of the meetings, and one brilliant person figuring out a personal letter from the child might help. And in that school, from then on, personal invitations were sent to every parent, written by the children.
Oh.
So you could tell me no, but I dare you to tell little so-and-so, or, no, because they've taken the time to write a personal invite to mom and dad to whatever the school was having. So there we go.
Oh, very, very clever tactic, actually. So great. Okay, so
I wanted to share just one thing, Bucky. I'm just sort of summarizing a process, more or less, of how we can do this in whatever avenue we're coming from. Just a 30-second slide.
Okay.
Let's see if it works this time.
Okay, fantastic.
Can you see that, Bucky?
Yes.
Okay, so basically steps for fostering engagement. I think it's really about starting with what you want, which is what we've all said. What is behind the need for engagement? What is the actual issue? And that would be the basis for the activities you develop. There's no point starting to think about brilliant international evenings and all of that when your parents aren't invested in it. They don't feel the need to. They don't even feel happy to come into school. Maybe that's not what you actually need, and a conversation with them would help. Select a champion. If somebody doesn't volunteer, get a group of people together to help knit the energy into one place and help move things on in some sort of direction. Think about gathering views from everyone, both internal and external to your community. Thinking about all your staff members. And I cannot emphasize this enough. We need to remember that our school community is made up of more than just our teaching staff, as brilliant as they may be, and that we lose something by not putting everyone into the frame. Make a plan. Ensure that whatever you're making is something that doesn't put boundaries in its way. Think about everything you want to do, and then whittle it down to the things that you can do quickly and the things that need more planning, more thinking, more funding, etc. Share that with the community, see what they want to go for, see what they can help fund, what they can help develop, lead, etc. Actually do it. Whatever you commit to doing, have a go. I think something done not to the perfect standard is better than not doing anything at all. And then find some way to sort of evaluate the whole plan, evaluate what worked, what didn't work, did it actually hit the mark, and then do it all again. All right. So that's from me.
Thank you so much. That's a great way to round up the discussion and lead us out for the evening. Thank you again, Flora, Christalla, Mandy, for joining us this evening, for sharing. I knew it's going to be a good one because you've got a wealth of experience and insights. Fantastic ladies, as Zena said, brilliant, brilliant champions, and so inspirational as well. Mark, thank you for joining us with some of your comments and things like that. Next week with episode 4, we're actually going to be looking at how we can actually use social media to support our professional development. So I know this is something that's of keen interest to a lot of educators, particularly during the lockdown period. So I hope you can actually tune in and join us then at 7 o'clock next week, Thursday. So take care, everyone, and be safe, and see you next week.